What is going on, everyone? My name is Benjamin Nowak with Monster Bass, and in today's video we're going to be talking about the 4 different stages of springtime bass fishing. Regardless of where you live, whether it's Maine, California, Florida, or Michigan, these are things that you can apply throughout the spring depending on where you live. Now, which stage you're currently in springtime bass fishing is going to be dictated by where you live and what your current water conditions are. So we're going to start with early spring bass fishing. This is stage number 1, early spring bass fishing. This is typically characterized one of 2 different ways. If you have ice on your body of water during the middle of winter, like I do up here in Michigan, or if you don't have ice on your body of water during the middle of winter. Now, if you do not have ice on your body of water, you're typically going to characterize this or associate this with consistent warming trends. Once your body of water starts to consistently warm up, these fish are going to look to start moving into their early spring locations. Now, if you have ice, I start looking for early spring bass as soon as the ice starts to melt. The reason for that is bass are cold-blooded creatures, so their metabolism is driven by the environment around them. So as soon as that ice starts to melt, as soon as that water starts to warm up, these fish are going to look to feed. They're going to become slightly more aggressive. So early spring bass fishing for me starts as soon as the ice comes off the water. Now, where these fish are going to be living is either one of 2 different places. Around moving water locations where there's water flowing past them, flowing near them, gives them easy ambush points to ambush whatever sort of bait fish or whatever sort of forage they're looking to feed on. So I'm looking for either moving water or I'm looking for deep water access near early pre-spawn locations. So end of long tapering points in deep water near sharp breaks where these fish can push up and down to feed really easily. Those are the 2 different locations that I'm going to be looking for early pre-spawn or early spring bass. Now, moving into the pre-spawn, this is typically characterized by water temperatures in the low 50s to the upper 50s or low 60s. This is when those bass become really aggressive. They're looking to feed and they're looking to get ready for the spawn. So what they're going to be doing is they're going to be feeding aggressively. They're going to be moderately grouped up, but they're looking for highways to get back to spawning areas. So where you're going to be looking for these fish are stopping points along these highways to their spawning locations. So when you want to start looking for pre-spawn bass, start by identifying where these fish are going to spawn and then look for that connection point between that early spring location and that spawning location, and you're going to be able to find pre-spawn bass. Typically, it's long tapering points, it's secondary points, it's contour changes along that line between early spring and spawning bass. These fish are also really, really big and fat. Fish during this time of year are only thinking about 2 or 3 different things: feeding, spawning, and resting. So between these locations, you should be able to find fish that are grouped up, looking to feed, and looking to eat, and they're pretty much willing to eat a variety of different baits you're going to be able to throw at them. Typically, this is when I'm going to go with bigger baits, my swim baits, my bigger jigs, my crank baits, because really aggressive pre-spawn bass cannot resist an easy meal. Once you get into the spawn, these fish become kind of finicky. They're going to be very, very isolated, and you're not going to be able to pick off a ton of different fish, right? Like if you go to a spawning flat, if you go to a spawning area or you see a fish on a bed, typically it's like a one fish sort of deal. This is when you have to be really locked in, and fish are extremely vulnerable. So when they're spawning, what they do is they create a bed, and the male will move up on the bed first, and then the female will follow, lay her eggs, and then come back off the bed. And the buck will stay up there and guard. Typically for largemouth bass, this happens in the low 60s to the 70-degree range. For smallmouth, this will happen a little bit earlier. You're looking at like the upper 50s to the mid 60-degree range before those fish start to pull off. A lot of times this is going to happen in the back of spawning bays, in the back of pockets, and for smallmouth in particular, around hard cover, whether that's rocks with a sand bottom or gravel bottom, or they can be more exposed areas, but they have to be around hard cover. So that's typically where I'm going to be looking for spawning bass, is in protected areas near hard cover, whether it's on the main lake or back in a spawning bay at the back of a creek. You're basically looking for a flat area where these fish can spawn and be protected from the elements. Now, post-spawn for me is the toughest time of year to catch fish. The reason for this is these fish are extremely lethargic. They just spend a ton of energy basically traveling up into the spawning bays, protecting the spawning beds. Then they have to move back out to start to feed. Now, they can be aggressive when there's a bluegill spawn or a shad spawn going on, but it's tough to catch them because typically they're extremely vulnerable, they're extremely tired, they're stressed out, they've been fished for now about a month and a half to 2 months, really, really hard. So this is a time of year that it can get really tough to catch these fish, but where I'm looking for them is the same areas that I looked for pre-spawners. Those highways, those transition points in between where they spawn, back out to like that that early spring or early summer sort of location. Look for those highways and you'll be able to find fish around that. One unique thing about the post spawn though is that typically you can find a group of fish that will stay shallow. After they spawn, they'll go to docks. You'll be able to find them under grass mats. You'll be able to catch them flipping or throwing baits that are extremely fun to catch them on. But this can be a really tough time of year, so don't get frustrated, don't get stressed out. Because it can be a tough time of year to catch them, but it can be extremely rewarding and fun when you're going with a heavy weight or a big jig or a topwater to catch these post-spawn bass. Now, I'm going to go more in depth on each of these different times a year in later videos, but this really is just the introduction on the 4 different stages of springtime bass fishing. If you guys have any questions or comments, please let me know down in the comment section below. I'll be responding to each and every one of you personally. But thank you guys for watching. If you're not already, please hit subscribe on the Monster Bass channel because it'll let you know when we post more videos just like this one. And I'll catch you guys next time.